Welcome to one of our training videos for advisors of student organizations. This video is intended for advisors looking to understand how student organizations host or plan events, how student organizations might manage their funding and where it comes from, and the conduct process for student organizations. Where can student orgs host events on campus? There are several spaces on campus available to student orgs for the purpose of hosting different kinds of events. Some of these spaces include rooms in the hub, academic spaces, outdoor spaces, the rec center, and spaces managed by conference services. Spaces at the hub, academic rooms, outdoor spaces, and rooms in the rec center can be reserved at the reservation website reserve.ucr.edu. Any space managed by conference services needs to be reserved at a separate website, and that is hospitality.ucr.edu. The students themselves need to reserve these spaces and would be accountable to paying any fees that might come with using a certain space. It's important to note when making reservations to include as much detail as possible so that the event planners in those spaces know how to help the student organization have a successful event and to know if certain requests cost money or not. It's also important for the student organization to know which services they will need ahead of time, if possible. We understand sometimes student orgs may not know they need a certain service, and event planners can help them find any gaps in their event planning. This might mean discovering that they'll need tables for checking into their event, security, if a lot of people are expected, sound systems, stages to be built, and more. If the student org decides to have their event off campus, make sure they have properly weighed the pros and cons of choosing an off-campus site. With either the on-campus site or the off-campus site, there are things to consider, such as marketing. Is there a need for insurance? And the availability of possible vendors for services. If the group decides to bring a guest speaker onto campus, the guest speaker will need to sign a hold harmless agreement if they're not affiliated with UC Riverside. If you're an advisor that doesn't work at UCR, and you have a speaking or presenting role for your club, you would need to sign this as well. The folks in hub scheduling will provide this form after they look at the reservation request. For a more in-depth look at what clubs need to do in order to host successful events, please watch our videos on event planning and our officer-specific video for the officer position of events chair. These are all available on our YouTube channel for your club student leaders to watch. Now we're going to transition to funding and how money works for student orgs. They can vary widely in how they manage their funds and where their funding comes from. Student organizations can request money from ASUCR, or they can acquire funding from many other sources. Let's start with ASUCR, which is our student government. ASUCR allocates funding for student orgs annually. In order for student organizations to receive funding from ASUCR, they first need to activate an account. Once this account is activated, they will need to fill out a budget request form and submit it to the Vice President of Finance. They'll have an allocation hearing where their budget request will be approved or denied. When their budget is approved, the funds may only be spent in the manner outlined within that budget. There are two ways to spend money out of this budget. The first is to have an individual in the club make the purchases and then request a reimbursement. The second way to spend money out of this budget is if the vendor they are trying to use is an approved vendor with UC Riverside. This would allow them to request a quote from that vendor, which can then be used to request a purchase order from ASUCR. This would have the university pay the vendor directly out of their student organization account, meaning a student would not need to be reimbursed. In most cases, the students themselves would need to be the ones putting in these requests, but you can help them proof and think out these requests before submission, if they needed your help. For more details regarding the allocation process or the process for spending money from this account, please visit ASUCR's website at asucr.ucr.edu. Student organizations are also allowed to open off-campus bank accounts with an FDIC-accredited bank or credit union. This off-campus bank account is where all money that is fundraised is to be deposited. This would also include any dues that they may charge. By no means are any club funds to be deposited into any personal accounts, either theirs or yours. You should not be serving as a bank account for a club you're advising. Equally as important, all spending from this account should be club-related and not used for any personal expenses. For more information about opening a bank account for a student organization, watch our video on how to open a bank account, which would walk your students through how to open this account. They would need to be the only signatories. Club advisors should not have access to club funding, but you can give wisdom and support on how they spend their funding if you feel like they might need that direction. Student orgs are also allowed to apply for grants and co-sponsorships from campus departments, and they can ask for donations and sponsorships from individuals or businesses. It is important to note that when asking for donations, the vast majority of student orgs are not charitable organizations or nonprofit organizations, and they cannot give individuals or businesses tax deductions. If your club's treasurer isn't sure how to do something, they can start by watching our officer-specific video training for treasurers, available on our YouTube channel just like all of our trainings. Now, student orgs also need to adhere to the standards of conduct set by Student Conduct and Academic Integrity Programs, SCAPE. So in this section, we're going to outline what might happen if the club that you're advising starts to go through the conduct process. If the student organization you advise has been reported to have violated the policies outlined within the standards of conduct, the student organization will begin the conduct process as a whole. Once the complaint is filed at conduct.ucr.edu, it will be reviewed and any policy violation will be noted. A letter will be sent to the primary officer of the student organization outlining all alleged charges against the group. As an advisor, you may or may not also receive this communication. At this point, the student organization can admit responsibility and move to possible disciplinary actions, or claim to be not responsible for the alleged actions and begin the investigation process. Depending on the nature of the charges, all members of the organization may be interviewed individually by SCAPE during the investigation process. If enough information is gathered during the investigation to corroborate the initial complaints, the student organization will be scheduled for a committee hearing to determine if the group in fact violated any policies. The hearing committee is drawn from a pool of 16 members who include undergrad students, graduate students, faculty, and staff. The hearing is like a trial, where evidence and witnesses present to help the committee come to a decision and help the committee decide the gravity of disciplinary action needed if the student organization is found responsible. If the student organization is found to be responsible or not responsible, the club will be notified in writing about the result and the disciplinary action that has been decided. Student organizations are able to appeal decisions and disciplinary actions within 10 days of receiving written notification. We have another video outlining hazing, so check out that training video to learn how the hazing process might be similar or different if your organization is going through that specific process. Hopefully this helped you understand some of these processes a little bit better, and let us know if there's anything else that you have questions about. We have a few other videos for advisors, so please check those out next, and thanks for watching.